Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Fireside Chats with the Tax Goddess and Tax Goddess Live. I'm so happy to be here. Do you guys see our fabulous guest? I'm so excited to have Fred Kroin here with us today. So thank you for joining us, Fred. We really appreciate it. This podcast exists to educate, entertain, and inspire business owners, entrepreneurs, and all of those other crazy, fantastic, self-employed, passionate people out there. And we are here to bring you knowledge. And that's part of the reason why we've asked this fabulous man to join us today. So today is Tuesday, November 20th, 2018, and I, Shauna, your tax goddess, am joining you here live from sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. So, Fred, are you ready to do this?
Already, Shauna. I've been looking forward to it for a while now.
Yay! This man's always ready, so that's just not even a question. But, so Fred, I love this title. Guys, you're going to love this title. Fred is an executionist. So cool. Okay, anyway, so he is an expert in strategic planning, goal setting, and more importantly, in teaching business executives and managers how to move more consistently to achieve their goals. So Fred, again, super excited to have you here with us today. So thank you for being here. So I talk too much. You're going to take it all over, all the good bits. So why should our audience stick around and listen today? What is the one most important thing that they're going to get out of today's podcast?
Well, Shauna, thanks again for having me. I appreciate that. We've known each other a long time, and I'm excited that you've done these fireside chats and now getting my turn. So, again, I've run businesses for many years and have been an executive coach and taught workshop for leadership and management for a number of years. And now my practice is really focused on helping businesses grow faster and to achieve their goals faster. And the things that we find and reasons that they don't is business owners plan. And, you know, if they plan and they think they're being really diligent, they get their team together and they come up with a list of goals and they write them down on paper and they put them in a binder, and that binder goes, you know where they go. They go on a shelf somewhere collecting dust.
And we've all done it, listeners out there. We've all done this, so don't.
So,
yeah.
You know, it's great to have a plan, but it's not worth the paper it's printed on or the time you spent in it if you're not going to execute it. Yep. So when I took the kind of cutesy title of executionist, I point out to people that I don't kill people. I help companies, business owners, and their teams execute better to accomplish their goals, ideally faster and in better ways than they might have dreamed of. And it's not rocket science. And having been a boy physicist, I would know rocket science if it fell on me, barely. It's simply a matter of hard work and discipline and a process by which you carefully set goals. You get everybody on the same page on those goals, and then you have some sort of regular, to me, ideally monthly goal process where you revisit them. And here's the key reason that many companies fail is they don't hold each other accountable to the goals they set. So, you know, that's the whole ball of wax in a nutshell. You know, planning, documentation, goal setting, regular meetings to revisit goals, make sure there's ownership of goals, that every goal has an owner, not a team. A team can't own a goal. A person owns a goal. They may not even be the one who implements the goal, but the reality of it is you need somebody to quarterback it, somebody to determine what everybody's supposed to do and where they need help and what subcontractors they might need or partners. And otherwise, they don't get done. And if you don't check regularly to see about progress, you generally wake up some point into the year, whether it's halfway through the year, realizing that you've totally missed the boat. So, you know, there's a slide I use in my workshops that talks about what strategic alignment is to a company. And without going into great detail, it's if you vision the rowing team, the sculls going down the Tempe Lake or something like that, you've got 8 or 9 people typically in a boat. And the key to the boat winning is that they're all rowing in the same direction at the same time. They all know that they want to go fast. They all know where the finish line is, and they're all pulling at the same time and not dipping their waters in, which serves as their oars in the water, which serves as a brake. So getting everybody on that same page, as the saying goes, is key to having that strategic alignment that's primary in accomplishing goals. So I can obviously keep going. I gave workshops for 3 days and seldom let anybody else cut in. That's not true, but let me pause there and see what thoughts that brings to your mind.
Well, two big pieces. So one, you mentioned boy physicist, which is one of my favorite things about you, and that has nothing to do with what you were just talking about, really, but we're going to come back to that because that's just an awesome piece. But about goals, yeah. So, obviously, as you're saying, people write them, they do them, they know they should be doing them, and then they put them on the shelf. So what is your one piece of advice? And normally I save this for the very, very, very end, but if people have done that, if they have created these goals and they've put them on the shelf and they know that, right? It's kind of one of those like deep, dark little secrets that they're trying to hide in the back somewhere. What is your one piece of advice on how to motivate yourself to pull them back off the shelf and at least review them, relook at them, do something with them rather than letting them sit there?
Well, I've been doing this for clients for now 15 years or more, since I left my own businesses and the companies that I helped grow. To answer your question directly, and then I'm going to kind of take you back one step, if you don't mind. To answer your question directly is you got to have a process, and it's got to be scheduled. Okay. So the point is, if you've got goals, and the part that I'm going to back you up on is that how do you set good goals? How do you know when a goal is a good goal? Because if you got lousy goals, if they're motherhoody, wussy kind of goals, that's not word I like to use.
Wussy! Listen, Fred calling you all out. I love it. Wussy, all right.
So, the goal, well, I'm going to lose weight, is a wussy goal. Yeah, it's great. How much weight are you going to lose by when is better.
Not real.
But are you then not going to get on a scale and find out whether it's working or not? Probably. If you do, you may wake up one day and get a really wonderful surprise that you've lost the 20 pounds that you hoped you'd lose. Not you, me, of course.
Oh.
Who insists that 25 extra pounds, by this point in my life, I've earned them and I'm not giving them up. Good food and good wine are critical to my life, and I've earned it, but I'm in the gym 5 days a week to keep it from getting to 40 pounds. So you have to have a process, and you have to do it regularly. To me, regularly is monthly. I've had firms in different industries say, well, why can't we do it every 3 months? Well, the longer you make the time frame, the more likely you are to get behind and have less time to catch up. Think of it this way. If you do your meetings to check up on your goals every quarter, let's say you're on an annual calendar. So at the end of June, you do your second quarter wrap-up meeting. Everything's wonderful. Well, you don't do it again until the end of September.
Yeah.
So what's happened now? Now, all of a sudden, the world has turned to you-know-what, and now you've only got 3 months left to make it up. So doing it every 3 months is probably not good enough. I like to do them every month.
So,
and go ahead.
Question for you then, because, what I'm hearing, 3 months, not so good, maybe not a great thing. Monthly, there we go. What about weekly? What about daily? I mean, is that overkill?
Well, to me, probably, at least if you have a management team, even if it's just 3 or 4 people, these are all busy people who have jobs within the company.
Yeah.
So they've got to take care of their day-to-day stuff. And my way and the way I was, the company that I worked for and I taught leadership for taught, and it fit in with the way I ran my practices in the IT world when I did professional service groups running very big and not so big projects, is you bring your management team together in one place, ideally looking at each other. So you've got everybody in the room who can make all the decisions. There's no miscommunication. Players can't spin it one way to somebody and then go to the other guy across the hall and tell it a different story. Everybody's in the room. Decisions can be made. If you do that, most companies can do it between 2 and 4 hours a month. One meeting once a month with the management team.
Yeah.
it's far more beneficial than trying to catch up with Susie in the hall and find out how she's doing on her project, to have it all done once with everybody else around that might have access to grind or input to provide as part, or good ideas come from different places. So that's my way of doing it. And if you put it on, I've run meetings with clients who, and agreeably, I don't think that anybody should do this forever with a facilitator. But when I teach this process, which is typically taught in a half day to a management team, I'll then come back for the next 3 to 6 meetings once a month for half a day, typically, at worst case, till they get it down. The point is, we'll agree, we're going to do this on the afternoon on the third Tuesday of the month, because that's when we've got financials from the previous month. And that's when we will all have our spreadsheets and our goal reports and everything all together when we show up at the meeting, so we hit the ground running, because everybody knows when the meeting's going to be. It's the same time every month. Nobody does anything else that day. It turns out to be the most important meeting your management team and your company will have every month. If you do it when there's time to get together, or, gee, Joe's out of town, I guess we can't do it now. He didn't know it was going to be on the calendar. It starts to become, the thing that gradually dribbles out over a period of time, and you realize, gee, we haven't done one of these in a few months. So put it on a calendar, schedule the time. Great things get accomplished and goals get achieved faster. So does that answer that part of your question?
Yes.
Now the other part of the question that I think you didn't ask, but I know you know the answer, so maybe that's why you didn't ask it. How do you know when you're setting good goals? Would you like to hear a little about that?
Pretty please.
It'll cost you, but in any case, I didn't invent this, but it's a nice little acronym. I've tried to research over the years. I did the workshop to find out who created SMART goals. SMART. And if you visit my website and download my ebook, you'll see much of what I'm talking about there, including slides on SMART goals and the process for the meeting and all that sort of stuff. But SMART goals, fairly simply, do you want me to quiz you on this, or do you want me to just...
You see, what is this about? What's the goals? Okay, let's see.
Yes. What is
specific? Specific?
Yes.
Measurable.
Specific in what way?
Well, for example, if we're using your example of losing weight, 25 pounds by X date. Well, the date is kind of part of...
you to the end.
Yeah, I was going to say measurable, right? So that's the measurement of whatever it is. Okay. Actionable. So you are going to go to the gym 5 days a week and only drink 1 glass of wine a day.
Yeah, and I'll even add a little bit attainable or achievable.
Good
I like stretch goals because I don't want people to get discouraged by not reaching goals, but I like to put a little, skin in the game. Let's not make them slam dunk wussy goals. I used to, very often I've run these meetings for people where there were salespeople in the room, and when they have goals set out for months and months ahead of time, they know what they have to achieve.
Right.
In some case, they'll do what's called sandbagging, and they'll make the goals a little easier so they can come in and say, "Yep, I got my goal done," when they know there's a half a month left and they're not going to work that hard. So I want to stretch everybody. Not to the point of where it's painful, but where you got to work at them. So you got to make a commitment, and to yourself and the team.
So how do you know what is the difference? I mean, okay, hopefully each person coming with a goal is going to be like, yeah, I know it's a sandbag goal. Like, okay, maybe, but how do you know when something really crosses the point of being a stretch goal into like, there's no way? Because I've seen cases where, you have this and you set it as a stretch goal and then you way far surpass it. I mean, which is great, but like, how do you know where that cutoff is?
Well, the answer is, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm pretty good at reading people. But the bottom line is, I'm not a mind reader.
Yeah.
So time will tell. That's why when a client says to me, Fred, I'd like you to come in and teach your process to me and teach us how to set better goals, I ask them, are you committed to doing this for at least 6 months? Unless you get it way before that, in which case I'm gone. But, give me that 4 hours a month to come help you and be the facilitator at your meeting so that you as the business owner can just sit there and be part of the team and listen a lot, not dictate. So it's another good reason for having a facilitator. But how I know ultimately comes down to partially the feedback I get from the other people in the room. They know how smart Shauna is and how much she can typically accomplish around the metrics that define the ideally leading indicators for future performance. And
you just used a whole bunch of terms, which you're going to have to kind of lay out a little bit.
But the answer is, I'll look for each member of a management team, ideally, to have between 3 and 6, maybe 8 actionable goals each month. Around the metrics, each month, around the metrics that they define, because it's the metrics that drive the progress 6 months or a year from now. It's not what did you sell this month, it's how many proposals did you put out and what's the dollar value and what are the probabilities that you're going to convert those clients. And all of that leads to a series of events month to month looking at performance. And so if they've got, let's make the numbers easy, they've got 5 goals, 5 actions that they're agreeing to take this month. Well, at the end of the month, at the next meeting, when we report on the month's progress, they'll tell me, wow, I got all 5 of my goals done. Hey, give Joe a hand. He got 5 goals done. Wonderful. Joe's come back next month, and he got 5 goals done again. And the next month, 5 goals.
Next month, Joe gets 10.
That's when Joe gets Joe. What do you guys think? Joe's making 100% of his goals every month. Joe's sandbagging. Joe's taking the easy way out. Similarly, if someone is not achieving their goals every month, they're stretching. I typically look for people to achieve ideally around 60% of their goals. 60 to 70%.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that if your goal was to bring in 5 new clients this month and you only brought in 4, that you achieved your goal. The goal was 5. You didn't achieve that goal. It means that if you have 5 distinct goals, 3 or 4 of them you should make, and one of them maybe you missed. Or one of them maybe you got diverted by the CEO to do something else, or some client delay came underway. So there's reasons why. And the whole point of this process is to get everyone comfortable with being honest about how they're performing and being okay to admit, I was wrong. I didn't make it. I thought I could do it. But I'm thinking about how I can do it. You know what? I could use a little help. Anybody have any ideas on how I can do this? So you get a team that's comfortable with challenging each other and holding each other accountable. That's when I know I can leave. Because until then, usually I'm the one holding people's toes to the fire.
Which is a very scary prospect. I've been on the other end of that. Well, it's a good thing. No. But they're definitely, when you're creating these goals and, okay, great, it's a stretch goal, it's whatever. But to have someone actually hold you accountable. And that's really what I'm hearing in a lot of this conversation is, of course, there's all these other pieces. You talked about metrics, you talked about SMART goals, you did these different things, but holding you actually accountable to actually finishing them is an entirely different issue. And that's what it seems like most businesses are missing.
And I taught 50 or 60 workshops for management action programs here in Arizona. Probably means someplace around 800 managers and executives and small business owners through that workshop. Yeah. There are 2 things that they're not good at as a whole. One is communications, and the other is holding other people accountable. They're very often good at holding themselves accountable, but it's that whatever that little voice in the back of our ear was growing up in the sandbox, if you don't have anything nice to say about somebody, don't think anything at all, or that sort of thing. So we don't want to give people bad news or what we think they'll perceive as bad news or hurt their feelings. I'm sorry, it's a business, and you're not hurting someone's feelings if you are holding them accountable to what they said they would agree to do. And that's why it's important that goals be negotiated, not passed down from the boss. If the boss says to me, Fred, you've got to put 20 people in next month's workshop. That's not my goal. That's the boss's goal.
So
I might, when he says that, I might say to him, I can't do that. If it's a good relationship, I'll say, are you crazy? I haven't had that many people in a workshop. I don't like workshops when they get that big. It's not good for the people in the workshop. But the point is, you want to negotiate goals, and it's okay to renegotiate goals when situations change. And sometimes it's handy to have that independent third-party facilitator, the old gray-haired Yoda type character that knows how these things work, and to help negotiate and break the log jams when the boss says, oh no, you've got to get this way this month. Maybe there's a time for that, and maybe there's a time to let's compromise a little bit. So I don't want to. I'm going to let you ask something in the middle, but I don't want to lose the rest of the smart goals.
No, me neither. But the one thing I want to jump to, let's finish SMART goals, and then let's jump to talking about a single entrepreneur with no team, because that's a whole second piece of this, right? We've been talking about people with teams and pieces. Okay, so SMART goals, right? Okay, so we have the first specific,
measurable, which means you have metrics. You define a way to show, you figure out what it is that you would measure if you're having a good month in your area of the business.
Okay, so if we're sticking with sales, that one's really easy, right? Because typically sales is how much did you sell or how many proposals did you do. Production could be really easy, right? You produce so many widgets. What about things like HR, where it's a little more...
The further you get from either the delivery end at the customer end or the top of the line part, the further down into the food chain, the closer in the middle, they get harder. Uh-huh. But for HR, it's things like customer satisfaction, retention of employees, our annual performance reviews being done on time, things of that nature. How to have a pulse on the culture of the people. And these are sometimes very hard to define metrics for. And I've always said this before, none of this is cast in concrete. There is no one set of metrics for any business, even if I have 10 banks or 10 construction companies or 10 IT companies, every one of them is going to have different metrics and different people in different roles. So that process is the front end of this, once I've taught the system, is figuring out what those metrics are for each person. And some of them are pretty tricky. IT gets to be more around website, web hits, time on site, cost of acquisition of a client. But there are some that are very, very difficult to deal with. And we have to work them out. And I have to learn a little bit about the business because I typically go in knowing nothing about what they do.
Well, I was going to say, that's, to me, it almost brings it back to why you would want to bring someone like you from the outside in. Because, for all of us business owners, right, we know our own business because we built it from scratch, from the ground. So we've built all the systems, we've built all the pieces, we've built all of the things, right? So sometimes you can't see the tree through the forest, right? You just can't see your own, why is this one, like you might be thinking that this particular goal is really important, but it's really kind of not. But you don't know, you don't see that unless there's somebody from the outside.
We've always done it that way mentality.
Right, which is even worse. Oh God, there's a reason why you need help if you're always doing it that way, right? So,
and I'll give you a little anecdote. You can't tell because the logo of the shirt is now below the screen of my webcam. But one of my oldest clients is a very, very high-tech company that when I met with the CEO, and it's not a big company, it's about 25 to 35 people depending on times. And, they've been around for many years. It's a multi-generational family business. So when I interviewed the original CEO, who was the son of the founder, he said to me, "So, Fred, what do you know about super vibratory finishing?" And I said, nothing. I was kind of hoping you knew about that part. Yeah. What I bring is a knowledge of management practices and processes and communicating and setting goals and strategic planning, but every business is different. So, you know, the ability to kind of assimilate my way into a business takes time. I'll never know their business as well as they do. And frankly, there's an advantage there to me. And there's usually a time in the first couple of months where the CEO or business owner's light bulb goes off, where you realize, wow, it's good to have somebody in here who totally is third party, independent, doesn't know my business, can ask anything. There's no stupid questions when you're not expected to know anything, right? So I can ask whatever I want, and I can challenge people with impunity because I don't know how their business works. I don't know what their track record is. I don't know if they've been a superstar or a laggard. I can ask anything that comes to my mind. And I build up a rapport with the team that way. And they know that I'm safe. I have no power over them. I have no power over the CEO or the owner. I'm a hired gun, if you will, not in the execution.
Right.
But I'm there to help them all be better at their jobs and become more successful as a company. And maybe if I get into individual situations in coaching, maybe make them better at their jobs, whether it's managing or production or whatever it might be. So that impartiality gives me a lot of carte blanche with how I treat the team. And I probably did it with you. I know I do it pretty much with every client who's brought me in to help their team. I always turn to the CEO and I ask them, what do you expect from me? And they'll tell me, you know, honesty, I'm not looking for a yes man, et cetera, et cetera. You know, I want good advice. I want you to tell me things about my team. I want you to recognize any deficiencies that I may have missed. But then I turn it around to them and I say, well, here's what I expect of you. And it includes many of the same things, but it also includes you have to be okay with me challenging you in front of your team. I will never embarrass you. I'm always diplomatic. I don't scream and yell, not my nature. But I may say, okay, Mark, we've heard from everybody else. What's your thought? What do you think the decision should be? And in your best CEO posture and business owner, looking out for that bottom line, you'll give me your best results. And I may turn to you and say, what makes you think that's the right choice? Now, I may totally agree with you, but you'll never know. The job of every business owner and every CEO with a team of people, whether they're managers or all worker bees, is to teach their people to think like the boss. So that every question doesn't have to get answered by you, that people will be comfortable acting independently of you because they know how you think and they know where your values are and they know where your ethics has a line that you don't cross. And the only way you can do that is to learn to think like you. And most business owners, young, old, doesn't matter. Most of them tend to be insular.
Explain that.
They'll give you the end game. They'll tell you how they think. They'll tell you what the decision is, but they won't tell you how they got there. Not deliberately avoiding it. It's just like, well, here's the answer.
Just do this. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do this. It's important that they have the story. So my challenging a business owner forces them to go back. I mean, I don't care what the answer is. I just want them to give it, and I want the people around to hear it. And again, I'm an accountability coach. So when the boss gives his explanation, I may turn to his wife, husband, son. You agree with what Dad said?
And you can see all the oh no, the first time. I can already see it.
This is the forum. This is a safe forum. What happens in this room does not go out. Nobody leaves this room with differing opinions. If you got to think to disagree with, do it here. Let's talk it out. The best ideas come from dissent. There's no problem with disagreement as long as you don't do it in a disagreeable manner.
Yeah, be professional. Be, as you're saying, not confrontational. Just asking questions. Yeah.
No throwing things. You know, if you've got a position,
don't leave any heavy staplers on the table. Don't do that.
You leave the big blocks and the hammers outside the room. But That's rarely, if ever, a problem. I mean,
Good. I'm very happy to hear that, Fred.
people get it after a while,
Yeah.
and what I've seen in the teams that I've worked with the longest is the barriers of communications break down because they break down in a good way. I mean, the barriers disappear.
They're removed,
because
yeah.
people get comfortable with debating each other, regardless of title, regardless of who signs the check. Is it foolproof? No, but it opens the doors that never were open before, because it's seldom that a CEO or a business owner has that level of interaction with the individuals on his team as a group and gets to share their opinions and listen to their opinions. And part of what my job is when I facilitate meetings, whether it's the actual planning session or one of the follow-up accountability sessions, for want of a better term, is to get everybody talking and explaining why they do and what didn't work and why didn't it work and what are they going to do about it, and does anybody have any ideas? So they become a teamwork builds. Communications is dynamic. Decisions are made on the spot. Everybody understands the business better. I've had situations where people who are in different positions don't realize what a decision in their department might mean to somebody else. Envision a company that does a trade show.
Okay.
So let's say they're an IT company, and it doesn't matter what they are. Well, there's a team that goes to the show. They come back and they report to those that weren't at the show in the next meeting. And, well, they're very proud. We hope to get 50 leads. We actually got 100 leads.
Woohoo!
Exactly. Everybody goes, woohoo.
Yeah.
And then the sales guy starts thinking, and he says to himself, whoa, I can see the money coming in now. When am I going to get those leads?
Yeah.
And they better be qualified. The person in operations starts saying, oh, wow, I know that if we had 50 leads, we were going to get 10 prospects, 10 clients, maybe 5 clients, and I was going to have to build 100 widgets each for them, and I was geared up to do 500, but twice that number, I may have to put on a second shift. I may have to hire people. Well, now they're all there together. And now they can say, well, let's talk about those leads together. Let's discuss which are the best priority. Let's talk about the real big ones. Let's talk about what we have to do if we get that. Let's get enough lead time. And, oh, Mr. Salesman, don't promise everybody that you can have it done by next week.
Schedule.
So everybody who's in a position, whether it's a management position or they are the one salesman or the one person who fulfills orders in the company, they all have come from a different perspective and have different challenges. And by working together this once a month for barely 4 hours, they get to understand the challenges that each other faces. And how sometimes, you're making my job really hard by doing X.
Yeah.
Could you please stop doing X?
Just tweak. Just tweak a little thing. Yeah.
Ultimately, it's about what's best for the company as a whole and serving its client base the way they expect to be served. So it's all about improving the communications and teamwork of a group that's running an organization.
Yeah.
So I'll leave it at that and want to move to your question about what happens if you're a one-man band.
Yes, but I want to finish. You and I just keep getting distracted. There's so many tangents. Okay, so hold on. So I'm going to go down SMART and what SMART is. But obviously, podcast listeners out there, go to Fred's site. You're going to download. We're going to put it all in the show notes below. It'll be all over the place. So go download the slides. Go download the ebook. But SMART. Okay, we'll just go through that. So SMART, measurable, achievable, specific, okay, or specific. Oh, of course it's SMART. Sorry, specific, measurable, actionable, or achievable. Okay, both. Really. Okay. R would be realistic. So I'm not going to lose 50 pounds. Not quite. Okay.
I'm hoping for relevant.
Relevant. Okay.
Relevant to what becomes the question.
Yeah.
So, when you did your strategic plan, and you'll remember we did this with your team a few years ago.
Yeah.
My objective for every strategic planning session above all else, is to come up with the company's 5 to 7 most important key objectives for the year.
Okay.
What do we want to accomplish as a company?
Got it.
So you could call them company goals. I call them objectives because they tend to be bigger, more visionary, but nevertheless smart. So a smart goal should be relevant to some objective from the strategic plan. Are you getting the ball closer to the goal line on one of your main objectives? Because if you're not, why is that an important goal?
And these could be main objectives. Like this could be like within 5 years as a company, we want to triple in size. So how does that break down to this year to then break down to these goals for these people? Is that what you mean?
The goal, the action item for a person, whether it's a CEO or some other executive, might be come up with a target list of potential partners to help grow the company, or potential acquisition candidates, or new markets, or new products. So all of that is part of the strategic planning process that we go through.
Cool.
But when you're taking individual goals on a monthly basis, you always ideally want to try to tie it back to what's this going to do for us for the big picture at the end of the year. So that's the relevant
So
part.
relevance. Okay.
The relevant. And the last one, I'm sure you know, for T.
Time. It's all about time.
Time bound.
Yes.
A goal without a deadline. I have a word for that. Do you remember it?
A wish? Yay!
Exactly right. Good. She hasn't forgotten that.
No, I'll tell you what, it's because a certain somebody keeps drilling the thing. It's in there, man. It's so in. Oh, I have no idea.
So you must have a deadline.
Yeah.
Deadlines should be realistic and reasonable, but sometimes there are things out of your control, like there's a conference coming up or there's a client delivery due that forces a deadline of a certain task.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a deadline, because if it's not, it's just going to fly off and get done whenever you have time, whenever you feel like it, when you have nothing better to do, when you run out of things to talk about at the water cooler. Well, maybe I'll look at that one. So it must be time bound. And typically when we're doing these goals on a monthly basis, it's a goal, an action that we expect to achieve, ideally prior to the next meeting a month from now.
Yeah.
Or at most 2 out, so that we may have to stage it or chunk it up, as the project people say. So always a deadline. So that covers the SMART acronym.
And so one of the questions that I have is, I was thinking about this, because you know me, I'm a systems person. I love systems. I love having checklists. I love, it's got to be the accountant in me, right? I just yay for things that I can check off a box, right? So do you have like a template or some sort of piece of paper or something that somebody could take with them to a meeting to try and lay this out, to watch and compare, these were my goals last month and these are my ones this month, and here...
What do you think the answer is?
Of course I know the answer to that, but...
This whole process is so simple, at least to me. There's really only 2 different pieces of paper. There's what we call, in the MAP terminology, MAP being Management Action Programs, the company that I taught workshops for, we call the Vital Factors spreadsheet. This is where the company is on a big Excel spreadsheet, typically a couple of pages, maybe tops, where each person's metrics are in rows, and every month, going this way, looking your way, month by month, it's what do they expect to achieve each month of those goals. And that's just kept by the company. I don't do that. You probably wouldn't want me to be in your internal workings every month and hold me accountable for that. The other is that every individual has what I call a goal progress sheet, which is a kind of rolling spreadsheet that says, okay, here are my goals for this month. Did I achieve it or didn't I achieve it when I come to the meeting? I report on what's achieved, what's not achieved. Then I report on, am I deferring this to a later date, or is it no longer important and we kicking it off? And then it's okay, based on what I said I did this month and what I'm going to do, here's what I'm going to do next month, down below it. This is what I'm proposing as my goals. And everybody gets to hear those. So you put your stake in the sand in front of your teammates, what you're going to do, and you will, during the course of the month, prepare to come back and answer them. So 2 pieces of paper, 1 per person and 1 for the company.
And 1 for the company. Okay, so let's switch. This is good. This is a perfect time to switch to the individual side, because we do, our listeners out there, we have a lot of people that do have teams, right? But we also have a lot of people, excuse me, we also have a lot of people that it's just them, and maybe they outsource to a couple of contractors, but they're not really a part of the core team, that kind of thing. It really just is them. So how would a single individual business owner without really a team implement some of this stuff?
Well, my experience has been with people like that, and I've worked with many. I've worked with the ones who come to mind most are some independent sole practitioner lawyers. Who
I could see real estate agents. I could see, attorneys are great. Chiropractors, maybe it's just them and like a couple of PAs or something. Yeah.
Yeah. They tend to be very operationally oriented, and they kind of get lost in the chaos of the day-to-day.
They're in it instead of working on it, right?
Right. And that's the standard lament. Every business owner needs to spend more time working on their business than in their business.
Yeah.
Because the on is the bigger picture. So what I've done for the solopreneurs is mostly very similar to what I do for larger teams. It's when you plan, and again, I taught a whole module on planning, and I teach it, and you'll find some of that in my book, is look at your history. Where have you been? What have you accomplished? What do you want? Where do you want to get to? You tend to look at the past, and then and obviously put a stake in the sand for what the present are, and those are all metric based. You define, revenue and profit and the other metrics, non-financial, which are very often the more important to drive the revenue and profit, which is ultimately what everybody seems to care about. But it's those actions that you take and those, as I said before, leading metrics that lead to the money. And once you've established the present, then we hypothesize, okay, where do you want to be a year from now? People say, well, gee, Fred, I want to do a 5-year plan. 5-year plans are great.
That was not what you were about to say.
None of them have ever been right. My 1-year plans, the 1-year plans my clients do are typically wrong a month later.
No.
So why spend a lot of money on bringing a team together, hiring a fancy hotel room if you decide, well, I'm going to really do this as a dog and pony show, and get everybody together to do a plan that's going to be wrong tomorrow. I focus almost exclusively on 1-year planning. Where are you now? This is just the 4th quarter of the year. What are you going to do next year? January 1st is going to come along. Many of you may think, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend anybody, but you may say, well, I've got a budget for next year. Well, whoop-de-doo. Budget is not a plan.
Yes.
Budget is a hope and some guidance based on actuals that you established what you spent this year and what you think you're going to spend next year.
And they seem like two different things, a budget. And so, speaking from the accountant standpoint, I'll throw in my 2 cents. A budget is a very helpful thing, but has almost nothing to do other than the gross sales line, basically, with the goals that you're talking about. I mean, a budget is how are we going to spend the money once we have it, effectively.
Well, right. And it's critical to know what your goals are because goals cost money.
Most of them. Yeah.
Most of them. Do we have the right people?
Right.
Do we have to invest in R&D or a call center?
Yeah.
It may affect, it almost surely will affect your budget.
Yeah.
You can't just take last year's budget and say, well, we're going to go up by 5% and slap it in. You would shoot a client. I
would have some very, upset accountants and CPAs out there, I'll tell you what.
So getting the entrepreneur, the sole business owner, to actually look at their business and to think about where they want to go and what do they need to go. I don't mean to generalize, but when you're in a sole practice, you tend to do everything. You're
the one person. I mean, yeah.
You don't have anybody to delegate to.
Right.
So you find yourself doing lots of jobs. And this is where I get on my kind of being cute horse. I don't care if you got a really small company of one person, you're still the CEO of you.
Yeah.
And you need to you are the head of the company. I know you wish you could pay yourself $1,000 an hour, but make believe you did.
Yeah.
Would you pay someone $1,000 an hour to write checks or to answer the phone? Personally, that these people who can offload stuff so you can focus on the real job of running the company and deliver quality products and service to your customers.
Yeah.
And that's what I get them to focus on. And I get them to focus on metrics that they probably never looked at. What's your average billing rate? What's your average client worth? How long does it take you to get them? What percentage of the clients' prospects you talk to do you convert to clients? It's a sales process, but most solo practitioners don't see it that way. But they've got to look at themselves as a sales engine and how much money they can create by a client, how much money it's worth to invest in marketing and advertising and what works and what doesn't. So it's a different process when there are less people to spread the work out, but it's usually quite eye-opening because there are things they never even thought about considering measuring. It's rare that I get to a solo person who already has all the numbers that I look for.
Well, and as you're saying,
running the business.
I was just about to say, as you're saying, they're spending time in the business, answering the phones, writing checks, doing these $10 an hour jobs rather than the $1,000 an hour jobs. And Fred, of all the things besides SMART goals, of all the things that I've ever learned from you, the $1,000 an hour job, and each person, whether you are a solopreneur or you are in a team, each person at their level needs to be doing their version of the $1,000 an hour job. Right? Whew, we have 47 minutes on SMART goals and being awesome, and we haven't even started with some of the other questions. So, are you okay if I jump though, Fred? You're on a roll, man. You're burning it up, burning it up. Okay, so, and we'll have to come back to the personal stuff because I just need people to know more about the boy physicist, but we'll get back to this for sure. So, what is one of the biggest mistakes? Okay, so besides not having goals at all, right? What's the one major mistake that you see solopreneurs or businesses or whatever, the biggest mistake they make?
Well, I don't know that there's only one, but I think to a large degree it is either doing the wrong jobs yourself.
Okay, answering the phones if you're the CEO.
Right.
Got it.
Or it's giving the wrong job to the wrong person.
Talk more about that.
Well, we talk a lot about who the right person is for a job.
Okay.
And who the best person is for a job.
Okay.
Now, I'm shrinking at 5'7" or 5'6" now. I used to be bigger, but I'll never be an NBA basketball player.
Oh.
And yet, if I was with Peter Dinklage, one of our favorite actors from Game of Thrones,
yeah,
and his friends, I'd be the best person to play center on a basketball team.
Got it.
So sometimes you're dealing with who's the best person for the job, and sometimes you really want who is the right person for the job. So that's why it becomes very important when you're hiring to define the job and then look for the person to do the job. So that's why when we talk about HR-related issues and staffing and recruiting and stuff in the workshops we used to give, and I don't do them anymore, other than privately, we talk about every job's got to have a job description. And it's got to know what its responsibilities are, and it's got to know where a job begins and ends. And then you've got to define the characteristics that make up that job. And a lot of that is behavior and personality and communication skills and other things. But, when you, obviously, if you are a solo entrepreneur and there's a job to do, your job is, your question becomes, what is the highest priority job now?
Yeah.
Not what can I do, not what would I like to do, but I've got this instant in time. What should I spend it on? What is the most important thing I could do for the company now?
Yeah.
And I had one client who so embraced that she took a tennis ball, because she was a tennis player, and she put it on her desk. And I saw one day that there was a tennis ball on her desk. And I said, well, I know you play tennis, but why is that on your desk? She says, it's my reminder to keep my eye on the ball.
I absolutely love it. That's awesome. Okay.
So what I encourage everybody to do, whether you are a senior executive at a big company or a worker, is before you start your next task, ask yourself, is this the most important thing I need to get done? And a number of factors into that, whether what's due next and what's
right. Who's screaming the loudest,
job,
and
for the company, what's got the nearest deadline. But prioritizing is also something, and that's really important. And we used to teach a thing called the Pareto principle, which was focus on the vital few, ignore the trivial many. Make sure you know what your high priority jobs are, and do them first. So
love it. Love it. Okay. Book that you've given the most.
Well, I gave a lot of MAP's Vital Factors books out when I worked for MAP, because it is the system that we taught. And it's a really good book, and they've got a couple of follow-ons since then. I'm a big fan of Good to Great, the Jim Collins book. I'm a big fan of Getting to Yes, a negotiating book. Then the authors escape me for the moment. I like a lot of Patrick Lencioni's books. And when I facilitated Vistage and Catapult groups of CEOs and business owners, we gave out a book every month. And there are a lot of great books. And frankly, I'll admittedly say I'm not a big business book reader.
Yeah.
But there are some that are very well worth the read and to understand the concepts. So that kind of answers that question. I do more reading for fun than I do for business, frankly, at this point.
So what is your favorite what is your favorite fun book?
New things. Well, it's hard to pick one. I like a lot of the Daniel Silva books.
Okay.
I like the books, the movies that Tom Hanks starred in, about the Brown is the author, I believe.
Oh, yeah, the church one.
The church.
Yeah.
Those are fun. I read a lot of spy novels. Daniel Silva has a character called Gabriel Alon, who's an ex-Israeli, not really spy, and now he's well up into the security arm of the Israeli government, and those are always fun stories, espionage and terrorism. And I read a lot for fun. I read series and series of medieval fantasy books, largely probably because my original career choice as a child was I wanted to be a knight.
But you're a knight now. You're saving businesses from themselves. That's awesome, Fred. That is so cool.
See, I sort of kind of adapted it because I realized there were so few dragons left to slay and not that many virginal damsels to save. So.
I think you're doing a pretty good job of slaying the dragons in the business owner's own head. So love it. Love it.
Good analogy. Thank you.
All right. Well, so, I want to make sure, obviously, that our listeners, we have gone over so much today, so much. And I know that you've got a book out. So how would our listeners find the book?
Well, it's an ebook. It's free. It's
cool.
Downloadable from my website. Go to aligngoals.com or goalpartners.com. You'll find it there. Just click on it. It'll ask them to give their information, and then it'll download the book. And, I will probably follow it up with a call to see if there's something challenging them that they might like some free time from me to sit down and go over. And if not, they're welcome to the book and enjoy it. Hopefully, it's a surface document. I originally started writing it, and when I got up to about 15, 20 pages, my marketing guru at the time said, no, that's way too big. I said, well, I can't say it in less than this. Anything else is going to be a 200-page book. So,
Yeah. Well, we'll be waiting for full publication at some point in the future then, Fred, all the good bits.
Well, I'm having a lot of fun. I'm diverting some of my energy. I tried to retire now 16 years ago and found out in plain English I suck at doing nothing. And that's why I do what I do now. And hopefully I'm adding my value to society. And I donate a lot of my time to some good projects, including the Arizona Business Council, which I would be remiss if I didn't mention. It's a great group of about 50 people. It's a 501c6 that we pay to belong to give advice to small companies. So if you're interested in learning how the Arizona Business Council, call me on that one, and I'll put you in touch with the right people. Because it's so that's another good thing. And I have a little bit of a hobby that I picked up that's new to keep my mind challenged. I'm learning how to trade foreign currency.
Ooh.
So, borderline gambling, not quite, but it's very mathematical, so it's right up my alley. And it's disciplined, and it's a system, and I'm deciding whether it can actually work.
So perfect opportunity. You just have to mention what boy physicist. You so mentioned that at the beginning, and then it kind of fell off. So boy physicist, give us the 2-minute overview of boy physicist to slayer of corporate dragons.
Started as a boy physicist, worked for 4 years as a physicist doing defense-related things related to spy satellites and photo optical reconnaissance and all kinds of cool stuff. Decided that it was not real world enough. I didn't see the contribution, so I had gotten into computer programming. By accident and necessity in my job because the mathematicians didn't understand what we were trying to do. So I became a programmer, and I said, this is really cool stuff. These computers, okay, so they're the size of my 8-foot door with 8K of memory. They're really cool, and I like the way they think, and it's logical. So I became a programmer and a project manager, ended up with a master's in operations research, started building teams of IT people, ended up ran my own company in New York, which was home to me.
Yep.
And I had that for 11 years, grew it to about 30 people till we got acquired. I went to work for a big system integrator, ended up as a partner at Grant Thornton running their customer-facing IT organization on the East Coast. Decided that was too much bureaucracy for me, big accounting, management consulting. Moved to Arizona to take one more company through an IPO. Did that in 2000, St. Patty's Day, in time for the dot-com crash. Tried to retire and then found out I'm no good at this, doing nothing. Fortunately, was introduced by a good friend of mine who introduced me to MAP, and they asked me first to sell their workshops. And I said, well, I'm not really a sales guy, but I'll try my hand at that. And then fairly shortly said, you seem to know more about this than the people we're interviewing to run the workshops. So would you like to run the workshops?
Yeah.
So I did that for 6 years. And that led to a lot of really good clients and good, smart people that I met, but also led me to say, you know what? I don't really need a company to do what I do and to focus on what I want to focus on, which is helping the small to mid-sized businesses and not spending my time giving workshops. So that's 2009. I created Goal Partners and since Aligned Goals. And that's why I do what I do now.
Yay!
I can do it forever. So it's fun, and I'm glad to be helping people and seeing people learn and watching light bulbs go off in people's heads. It's a cool thing.
I love it. I love it. That's so cool. And Fred, thank you. I'm speechless because I just adore talking to you, and it's so much fun to learn from you. And so, Fireside Chat listeners, if you enjoyed today's chat as much as I did, please show Fred your appreciation. Share today's show with a friend, with a business owner, with a solopreneur, somebody that you know that might need some of this knowledge. Fred is a wealth of knowledge, as you can tell. So, Fred, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been absolutely amazing chatting with you.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and I'd like to leave you with one parting comment, which is a quote from one of my favorite characters that I used to post in my workshops. And I think you'll recognize the character, but the quote is, "Do or do not. There is no try."
That was awesome, Fred. Thank you.
It used to drive me nuts in work when people think, well, I'm going to try to achieve my goals. No, you're not going to try. You're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. So thank you, Yoda, for that words of wisdom from your thousands of years of knowledge. So pass it on.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. I love it. So can you tell I'm like, my cheeks are actually hurting from grinning so much right now. Okay. So thanks again for joining us with Fireside Chats with Tax Goddess Live. We're going to be again live next month. So, but don't fret. You can always find this episode and all the previous episodes on any of the podcast sites like Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes. We're all over the place. And of course, you can go to taxgoddesslive.com. While you're at any of those, please rate us. Please give us 5 stars, thumbs up, show us some love, share the podcast with, again, any other business owners, solopreneurs, self-employed, crazy, passionate, fantastic people. And let us know what you thought about the show. You know, we always want to bring topics that you want to know about. So if you have any ideas or other experts that you'd like us to bring on, please just let us know. You can reach out to us on my Twitter account at TaxGoddess, or of course you can email us taxgoddesslive@taxgoddess.com. So thanks so much, everyone. Fred, again, such a pleasure to have you with us, and have a wonderful day. We'll see y'all next month. Bye.
Bye now.